Hi, girls. Today we are going to be continuing our work on the Enlightenment. I was really happy to see the. I was really happy to see your responses and your homework. You guys truly had a grasp of the difference between um, Thomas Hobbes and John Locke. So that was really impressive. That is something that we will open with actually next year when I have you all for government, which is super exciting. I'm sure we will be able to foster really nice classroom conversations. But in the meantime, we're going to stay grounded here. I kind of want to just take a second to map out where we're really going with um, the rest of the quarter. So I'm going to be giving back your rough drafts with a little bit of some criticisms, just basically so that you guys can submit the best work that you possibly could create. You should take into account the peer reviews that we did, right? Everybody should have emailed their peer review to the student whose paper they were reviewing. And you should use this as guidance. Each student was given the same criteria that I would be looking for in a paper. I'm hoping that you guys inspired one another with your writing styles, your ideas, your ways of thinking. That's always really fun to see someone else's work and to see, what they're dedicating their research to. Um, I'm going to make the due date for your paper next. Um, next. Do I want to make it Friday? I'm going to make it next Friday at um, at 9 a.m. You guys have been working really hard on it, and you've been doing a really good job. We're almost there. I didn't want to stress you guys out with that project so much because we were transitioning to distance learning, but I will be available for Zooms and stuff like that if you would like to contact me to figure that out. So I'm really excited to really see what you guys come up with your papers. So in terms of curriculum, we are looking at the Enlightenment. So the Enlightenment pretty much paves the way and runs right into the French Revolution. We already took a look at the French Revolution, so we can kind of hold off on that for a second. We'll revisit. Enlightenment, right? It's just think of, even just the word itself, to enlighten someone. People are beginning to adopt these ideas and to question authority and to really pursue, their own journeys to freedom. They are abandoning this idea that, the kings and the monarchs are in power because God said so, right? They are kind of abandoning or rejecting this idea of divine right. And instead they're moving forward to, rule by the people. Okay. So we're going to be looking at the American Revolution a little bit. We're going to be looking at the French Revolution again. We're going to be stumbling upon the Industrial Revolution. So it's going to be things that are familiar to you. I think you guys will enjoy that. However, those themes that were present in your history classes in grade school carry out, and we even will revisit them again your junior year. So just hang tight. Okay, so remember, philosophers are beginning to rethink old ideas about government, religion, and economics. This is the Enlightenment, or the Age of Reason. A key piece of this is natural rights, right? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And this slide is important because it kind of just tells you how ideas develop over time. Let's see. Right, I just mentioned this. A monarch's rule is justified by divine right, whereas this new idea states that a government's power comes from the consent of the governed. The people only government in this new idea, government is only valid. I'm not even in the slideshow. Government is only valid when the people accept their rulers. So, if the people did not accept their ruler, or if they rejected the leader, that leader's authority is invalid. The people must agree to be governed in order for the government to have legitimate power. This is Thomas Hobbes. He believed that people stunk. He thought that they were awful and that they were rooted in violence and were greedy and selfish. And he thought that human life was nasty, brutish, and short. And he said that the people were so violent and aggressive and uncivilized that they needed a single ruler to rule over all of the people in order to maintain any level of order in society. He believed that people should give up all of their rights in order to receive protection from the government. Whereas John Locke, you should know that Thomas Hobbes supported the idea of an absolute monarch with total power. He also believed in the social contract, where people give up power and rights to a king who provides law and orders, which is exactly what I just said. John Locke, on the other hand, said that everybody is born with natural rights, life, liberty, and property. And he argued that the kings could be overthrown if they are not protecting the people. He agreed with the idea of a social contract that people do give up some rights in exchange for protection from the state. And if the government was failing to provide the protection, then the government was not valid because it's the consent of the governed. The people who are being governed must agree. John Locke supports a constitutional monarchy. We saw this with Queen Elizabeth. The English Bill of Rights. Basically, these limited the monarch. And when I say limit, think about a speed limit sign, right? It says you can't go greater than 40 miles an hour. Going anywhere beyond 40 miles an hour breaks the rules, right? So basically, when you limit the monarch, you limit just how fast or how much power they can have. We already did that. All right, so French philosopher Voltaire, he was one of the most famous writers of the Enlightenment. He spoke about freedom of speech, religion. He criticized intolerance, prejudice, and oppression. And he was jailed in France for these opinions. The free speech zone, right? Think about it. When should freedom of speech be restricted? People use the power of their freedom of speech to speak out against their government if they feel that they are being unjustly treated. People use their freedom of speech for awful reasons as well, like to slander, and to people use their freedom of speech in really awful ways. However, freedom of speech is always protected unless it directly incites violence. Baron de Montesquieu agreed with John Locke. He thought that government should protect individual liberties, and that if there's too much power, it can lead to tyranny. He came up with the idea of the separation of powers, which is the legislative, the executive, and the judicial branch. Separate the branches this way that each branch of government has its own duties and that there isn't too much power in one place, right? So we have these in the US today. Checks and balances. I'm so excited for Gov next year. Checks and balances limits the government in different ways. For example, we already went over this, but executive branch can veto, Congress can override. We have the judicial review. Rousseau was super interesting. He believed in individual freedom. He thought that people were naturally good, but that power corrupts them, and that free people should form a social contract, and the government should be based on the common good. He supported a direct democracy, which means that the people directly ruled government. Democracy is guided by the general will of the majority of citizens. He believed that you should trust the people and that the people should have a direct say over who leads them and what decisions are made in government. Montesquieu believed that you have to divide power among the three branches of government, whereas Rousseau said that the people should all make decisions directly rather than, having other branches of government make decisions. So we can do this together. I'll do this right now with you guys if you want. We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And this was the Declaration of Independence of 1776. John Locke wrote this piece. We should have known that because The quote mentioned unalienable rights like life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And these are the natural rights that John Locke said served as the basis for freedoms. The free communication of ideas and opinions is one of the most precious of the rights of man. Every citizen may thus speak, write, and print with freedom, but this shall be responsible for such abuses of this freedom as shall be defined by law. This is the Declaration of Rights in Man, 1789, and this is Voltaire. Remember, he believed in the freedom of speech. All legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States, which shall consist of a Senate and House of Representatives. The executive power shall be vested in a President of the United States of America. The judicial power shall be vested in one Supreme Court. We already know what this is, right? Montesquieu, because he created the separation of powers with the branches. In 2003, the communities of Freetown and Lakeville, Massachusetts held their annual town meetings and voted on the budget for the school district. Freetown voters approved a budget that reduced their contribution by $100,000 from what the school committee asked for. And this would be Rousseau, because he believes in a direct democracy where people show up and they cast their vote and whatever outcome happens, right? He would not like the idea of an electoral college. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, prohibiting the free exercise thereof. And this is Voltaire again, with expression. Governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute new governments. John Locke again, right? Every bill which shall pass the House of Representatives and the Senate shall, before it become a law, be presented to the President of the United States. If he approve, he shall sign it, but if not, he shall return it, with his objections to that House, in which it shall have originated, who shall proceed to consider it. It's Montesquieu. All right, guys, that was a really good job. So we're finished with Enlightenment, which was super exciting. What I want to do now, let's see. Don't mind me. Like I said, we were looking at the Enlightenment to kind of serve as a reminder of, what really propelled France in deciding to revolt. Let's see, I kind of want to pull up France again. Okay. I know we took a look at this, but I just want to take another look. So we have the French Revolution, right? The global impact. This is Versailles. Right. So the third estate was the commoners, and they were ready for a revolution. They took a tennis court oath, where the National Assembly decided that they would not disband until the new Constitution was written. The National Assembly wrote their revolutionary ideals in the Declaration of the Rights of Man of Citizens, which wrote out the freedoms that they expected to hold as citizens under the French government. They established a constitutional monarchy where the king is limited by a constitution that protects the rights of the people and lays out what rights and powers that the king actually did have. The National Assembly had the power to make laws, but the king remained head of the state and he could veto any law. So ultimately, the National Assembly didn't have much power because then the king would just veto every single time. Hundreds of people marched to Bastille, which was a medieval fort and a political prison, to find gunpowder. 98 people were killed, and the revolutionary crowds took Bastille. So this is what started the French Revolution. We're going to see unemployment and hunger skyrocket. In October of 1789, women marched to the Palace of Versailles to demand bread. And this, keep in mind, this is all after the American Revolution. Women invaded the palace and killed the guards, and bread was given, and Louis never returned to Versailles. So then When the king signs the Constitution of 1791, he agrees that he no longer has absolute power. And then we have the election of the National Convention, which is a super crazy government, or it's very radical, I should say. King wanted to actually restore his authority and get rid of the Constitution. And he was to be executed by the guillotine. Reign of Terror, super, super interesting time in history. Robespierre called for drastic measures to save France from other enemies of the state. Robespierre tried citizens for treason against the revolution. He ends up being executed, so his reign of terror kind of turned on him. Napoleon took advantage of the situation going on in France and came to power as an emperor and dictator. We saw this trend when in ancient Rome, when the assembly would begin to crumble under pressure, a dictator would come to power to kind of govern the people. And that's the end of that, which was great. So let's see, Napoleon. I should have had all these open, sorry. So Napoleon after the French Revolution, that's what I want to look at. Okay. So would you want a democratic government that asks for your opinion but complains more than it accomplishes? Or would you want a single leader who never asks you what you want, but he gets stuff done? Think about this. So we're going to look at Napoleon Bonaparte after the French Revolution. France was an absolute monarchy where the king had absolute power. Sorry, my puppy is literally snoring right now. France was an absolute monarchy where the king had total power. The Third Estate swore the tennis court oath and created a limited monarchy led by the National Assembly. Bastille is where the French Revolution took place after the French people raided the castle. The National Assembly grew tired of Louis the 16th vetoing their ideas, so they tried him and executed him and created a republic. Robespierre led the Reign of Terror to protect France's new republic from traitors, killing thousands. This is the French Republic. We have the Holy Roman Empire. To the east, when Louis the 16th was executed during the French Revolution, other kings were afraid that these ideas would lead to revolutions in their countries. And this was a very valid concern because France saw what happened in the United States and decided to have their own revolution. Prussia, Spain, England, Sweden, and Austria formed what is called the First Coalition. They went to war with France to bring the Bourbon dynasty back and end the French Revolution, right? So they wanted to kind of put out this fire before their empires and their kingdoms turned against them as well. It was a very fearful time. Napoleon Bonaparte was a popular soldier in the French military, and he supported the Republic. He was given command of the army in 1796 to defend France from this European coalition. He showed great military skills and he defeated the First Coalition. And he thought that he could do a better job running the French government than the leaders of the Republic. He staged what is called a coup d'etat. A coup is a very common word in the political science realm. A coup is an overthrow of the government. It's a violent, radical overthrow of the government and the Republic. And so Napoleon made himself a dictator. His control of France was supposed to be short-term in order to fix or restore the order. However, that's not what happened. So Can Napoleon still consider himself a Republican, which is a supporter of the French Revolution after his coup? And is this type of government what the philosophers imagined during the Enlightenment? We would have to understand exactly what Republican means, which is something that we're going to look at shortly. But France is desperate for leadership, and they allow Napoleon to have as much power as he wants. And so he names himself emperor in 1804. The people, our John Locke's, our Montesquieu, they are outraged. This is a return to absolutism where the king or the queen has complete control. But for whatever reason, the people believed in Napoleon and they accepted his role as emperor. So Napoleon made good changes and bad changes in France. He improved education, created a Bank of France, and made everybody pay taxes. Okay, right? Who doesn't love education and public funding? He created the Napoleonic Code to make French laws more equal and clear, and he expanded the French Empire. Some bad changes are that he used the military to run the country. He limited the freedom of speech of his citizens, and he executed or jailed the people who spoke out against him. And he forced men to join the army, and he continued fighting in Europe. Napoleon sold the Louisiana Territory to Thomas Jefferson in 1803 for $15 million. We remember this, right? And that was a Louisiana Purchase. He defeated Prussia in war against the Fourth Coalition in 1806, defeated Spain in 1809. We see that he defeated Austria and Italy in a war against the Third Coalition in 1805. And after he defeated the First Coalition in 1796, he pretty much just continued to all these other battles. He created the largest European empire since the Romans by 1810. Okay, so the line are countries under his control. The dark green is the French Empire. The purple are countries that allied or created alliances with Napoleon, and the orange shaded countries are countries that are at war with Napoleon. So he forces Europe to obey the Napoleonic Code. He forces them also to obey the continental system. So this is a strict blockade of all British goods and a heavy tax on anything not French. This obviously serves to benefit France's economy. He wants people to turn away from buying non-French produced items. This way, they would buy more items that were made at home, stimulate the economy, rather than buying things and benefiting other countries' economies and businesses. So, do you think that the Napoleonic Wars were offensive motivated by imperialist ideas and the desire to expand and conquer other peoples? Or do you think this was motivated to save France from potential outside threats? Interesting question to think about. So we're going to look at the end of Napoleon's empire. By 1812, the only countries Napoleon did not control were England, Sweden, and Russia. And when Russia violated the continental system and bought grain from England, Napoleon attacked because this violates the idea that you should only buy French-made goods. Napoleon advanced towards Russia with a superior army. However, the Russians used a scorched earth policy where they attack the French and then they retreat while burning everything so that Napoleon's army cannot use them for food or shelter. This devastates Napoleon's army and military success, and he lost to Russia in 1812. So he arrives in Russia with 614,000 troops and only leaves with 40,000 alive. He was exiled to Elba, and France brought back the Bourbon king, Louis the 18th. However, Napoleon returned and created a new army to lead France. The Sixth Coalition of European powers defeats him at Waterloo in 1815, and this totally ends Napoleon's reign. He was exiled to the South Atlantic, where he died of either stomach cancer or poison in 1821. So, do we think that Napoleon was a great French hero, or do we think that he was a power-hungry dictator? Right? 1 second. You will have some assignments to complete by next class. They are attached in this post. Hope you girls enjoy this lesson as we are kind of getting out of the super early pieces of history and getting into a more contemporary. I know I enjoy it. I hope you guys do too. We're going to be looking at World War I soon, which is really cool. As we just finished the French Revolution. Super exciting. Next up, we will be looking at, we already looked at Napoleon, so we are going to be checking out the Industrial Revolution in Great Britain, which will be really exciting. And then after that, after looking at the Industrial Revolution in Great Britain, we're going to be looking at revolutions in Europe. It's going to be cool. So let me know if you guys need any help or if anything was unclear, and I will help you out. Keep up the good work. Please keep an eye out for my comments on your work, on your rough draft, and please expect, quizzes in the future. You have open access to your notes. These quizzes are 10-question quizzes just to kind of make sure that everybody is, not just going through the motions and that we're actually, picking up on these key ideas and concepts. So don't be surprised when you see a quiz due, and you'll have, 4 days to do it. Just make sure you get it done. So thank you, girls. Enjoy the rest of your day and let me know if you need any help.